Jeffrey Epstein died in a Manhattan jail cell in August 2019. Within weeks, his name disappeared from the headlines and from the board documents of a little-known Israeli tech company he had been quietly funding for years. That company was called Carbyne. And right now, it may be the 911 system in your county. But Carbine is only part of the story, because by the time Epstein was arrested, he had already been quietly building an entire surveillance empire across borders, involving Israeli intelligence veterans, Russian oligarchs, a Putin insider, and Peter Thiel's own money. Almost none of it has been reported on. Carbine, originally incorporated in 2014 under the name Reporty Homeland Security, is an Israeli tech startup that markets itself as a next-generation 911 solution. The pitch sounds reasonable on the surface. 911 systems are old. They were built for landlines. They don't handle location data well, and they cannot receive video. Carbine's platform promises to fix all of that. When you call 911 in a Carbine-enabled county, dispatchers can access your real-time GPS location, request a live video feed from your smartphone camera, and receive audio from your device, all streamed directly to the call center. Fox News called it the answer to America's aging 911 infrastructure. By the time Epstein was arrested in July 2019, Carbine was already deployed in multiple US counties and had signed partnerships with companies including Google. Here's what those glowing press releases left out. Carbine was founded by veterans of Israeli military intelligence. One of its co-founders and directors was Pinchas Bucharest, the former director of 8200, Israel's elite signals intelligence division. Unit 8200 is often compared directly to the NSA. It handles signals interception, cyber warfare, and large-scale surveillance operations. This isn't speculation, it's on public record. The man who helped design a company now embedded in America's emergency services previously ran Israel's most powerful intelligence surveillance unit. That alone raises questions, but the story doesn't stop there. In 2014, 6 years after pleading guilty to soliciting private from Jeffrey Epstein began funneling money into Reporty through a partnership with former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. The investment was structured specifically to conceal Epstein's involvement. When Haaretz broke the story in 2019, co-founder Bucharest told the paper, "Barak brought the money, and as far as I'm concerned, it's his. I don't know Epstein and haven't met him." The leaked emails tell a different story. Those emails show Barak personally scheduled a virtual meeting between Epstein and Bucharest together in December 2014 and directed his lawyers to alter the investment terms based on Bucharest's input. Epstein was not a silent bystander. He was at the table. While all of this was happening, Epstein wrote to Barak in April 2015, "I enjoy strategy and strategic planning, and at the same time am amazed by the rate at which technology has moved into the private sector. Many corporations are looking for a new military-like perspective on management." A convicted S-offender, building a surveillance portfolio and pitching it as a business philosophy. While hammering out the Reporty investment, Epstein was also working to pull Peter Thiel into the deal, co-founder of PayPal and of Palantir, one of America's most powerful surveillance contractors. Epstein insisted that Barak spend, in his words, real time with Peter Thiel, and personally arranged dinners between them. In February 2016, Epstein reportedly pitched Reporty to Valor Ventures, a fund co-founded by Thiel, and received a warm response with one partner writing back, "We'd love to hear more about Reporty." Valor passed on that round, calling it premature, but said they remain fans of what you are building. 2 years later, Thiel's other firm, the Founders Fund, joined a $15 million Series B funding round for the company, which by then had been renamed Carbine. Peter Thiel acknowledged to the Wall Street Journal that he had met Epstein more than once in 2014, saying, "I didn't think enough about what Epstein's agenda might have been." Thiel's money went into Carbine, the 911 company co-founded by former director of Israel's signals intelligence, funded through a deal structured to hide a convicted S-offender's role. At the same time Epstein was building his Israeli surveillance network, he was positioning himself inside Vladimir Putin's circle. In April 2015, Epstein introduced Barak to Sergei Belikov, a former Russian deputy minister of economic development, who then invited Barak to attend the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. But Epstein had bigger ambitions than just networking. In a leaked email Epstein wrote to Barak, "I spoke to Sergei afterwards. He will help you. I suggest you send him a note that states you think Putin and his advisors would benefit from spending some time with Jeffrey to discuss markets, currency, and the financial system, and that I am not political." He was asking a former Israeli prime minister to lobby a Kremlin insider for a private meeting with Vladimir Putin, while still on the S-offender registry. In July 2025, Senator Ron Wyden alleged that U.S. Treasury had files on Epstein's financial transactions with now sanctioned Russian banks totaling hundreds of millions of dollars. Those files have not been made public. Epstein was also in contact with Russian oligarch Viktor Veckelsberg, a known Putin ally, who backed a surveillance AI company called Fifth Dimension that promised to transform, in their words, massive scale data from multiple feeds into actionable intelligence using artificial intelligence in real time. Veckelsberg was later sanctioned by the United States for alleged election interference, and Fifth Dimension shut down in 2018. Carbine wasn't the only Israeli intelligence startup Barak was pitching to Epstein. In April 2016, Barak approached Epstein about investing in a second company called Levection, an electromagnetic imaging startup staffed entirely by veterans of Rafael Advanced Defense Systems, one of Israel's top weapons manufacturers. Barak described the team as having made, in his words, sci-fi-like achievements in military products, and offered to use, again in his words, the same construct we used in Reporty to construct the deal. The same construct, meaning the same method used to hide Epstein's involvement in Carbine. Levection later received part of a $1.5 million contract with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security in 2020 to develop electromagnetic imaging and AI to scan crowds for concealed weapons. The company went out of business in 2022, but its founder is now running a new startup called Scannery, which promises to perform mass airport security style scans of entire crowds using miniaturized radar. There is also a detail buried in the leaked emails that almost nobody has reported on. Epstein told Barak about a business tip he had received from Britain's Prince Andrew, writing that there were wealthy Chinese looking to start a personal protection company in Beijing because kidnapping has begun. Prince Andrew has since come under fire for his ties to an alleged Chinese intelligence operative. When Epstein was arrested in 2019, Ehud Barak immediately announced he was dissolving his investment partnership, and both Barak and Bucharest quietly removed themselves from Carbine's board. The company put out a brief statement and largely avoided press scrutiny because mainstream media was focused on the trafficking charges, the island, and the famous names in the flight logs. Nobody was looking at the 911 company. Carbine continued operating and continued expanding in the United States. Barak later called Epstein a terrible version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, who at the time seemed to be an intelligent person, socially well-connected, and said he did not know about any of Epstein's crimes. Then, in 2025, 6 years after Epstein's death, a hacker group called Pandala leaked a massive tranche of Barak's private emails, posted by Distributed Denial of Secrets, widely considered a successor to WikiLeaks. That's when the full picture of Epstein's surveillance network began to come into focus. Here's what we know for certain. A company founded by the former director of Israel's most powerful signals intelligence unit received funding from a convicted funding deliberately structured to hide his involvement. That company built a platform capable of accessing cameras, microphones, and location data of any civilian who dials 911 in a participating county. That same convicted offender was simultaneously trying to meet Putin, moving money through Russian banks, brokering deals with UAE officials, funneling investments from Peter Thiel's own funds, and pitching a second Israeli weapons tech startup using the same hidden structure. None of this has been investigated. The company is still operating, and somewhere in the United States tonight, someone is calling 911, and Carbine's platform is deciding what data to collect. The question isn't whether Epstein was a monster. We already know that. The question is, who was he working for? And what did they build while everyone was looking the other way?